In Week 11, there are 4 teams that have bye weeks, and they are the Giants, Packers, Seahawks, and Titans. Every one of these teams has at least one, if not more, good fantasy players in their offense, and with those players not playing this week, let's take a look at some waiver options that could help you win a Week 11 matchup before the playoffs start. Before I get started though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. With both Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers being out Sunday due to the bye, and hopefully you don't have Daniel Jones or Ryan Tannehill as your starting quarterback for your fantasy team, the first player we'll look at is Raiders quarterback Derek Carr. Carr plays the Bengals at home, and he'll be fresh off 10 days rest, while the Bengals just got embarrassed by the Ravens 49-13, where Lamar Jackson had a perfect passer rating, threw for 3 touchdown passes, and had a Michael Vick-like touchdown run to put the icing on the cake. Carr should be good in both Weeks 11 and 12 as he faces the Bengals defense this week and the Jets the following week. He is owned as of Monday afternoon in 36% of ESPN fantasy leagues. The second quarterback we'll look at for Week 11 is Broncos quarterback Brandon Allen. The Broncos are more than likely going to lose this game in US Bank Stadium against the Vikings and be behind for a large part of it. The Vikings defense tends to give up a lot of chunk plays whenever Zimmer has them play the bend but don't break defense when the game is well in control, and this is where Allen could have a big game fantasy-wise. If the final score ends up 28-17 or something along those lines, or even worse, Brandon Allen could easily have a 300-yard, 2-touchdown day and give your team a good fantasy performance. In 3 of the Vikings' first 4 home games, quarterbacks Matt Ryan, Derek Carr, and Carson Wentz have all thrown for at least 240 yards and 2 touchdowns. The only quarterbacks to not throw for more than 240 yards and 2 touchdowns is quarterbacks Case Keenum and Dwayne Haskins, who Haskins came in for Keenum after he suffered a concussion and only played half of the game. The Vikings won all of these games by more than 15 points with the exception of the Redskins, and I think Allen can continue the trend of having good fantasy performance while the team loses by double digits. Allen is owned in just 1.1% of ESPN leagues as of Monday afternoon. The first running back we'll look at is Lions running back J.D. McKissic. McKissic had 10 carries in Sunday's loss to the Bears, but he did have 6 catches. Ty Johnson left this game early due to a concussion, and his status for Week 11 against the Cowboys is currently unknown. JD has 9 catches in the past 2 weeks, and if Ty is indeed out Sunday, then it will only go up. The Vikings exploited Dallas a few times on big screen plays Sunday night, and with Stafford being hurt, if he does play, I would imagine they'll look to make his role as painless as possible, and throwing screens would help him out and your fantasy team with J.D. McKissic being the beneficiary. I look for JD to get at least 15 touches against Dallas if Ty does not play. As of Monday afternoon, McKissic is owned in 16% of ESPN leagues. The next running back we'll look at is Falcons running back Brian Hill. Hill had 20 carries in the Falcons' win over New Orleans yesterday, and this of course is assuming Devontae Freeman is out in Week 11, but 20 carries is a lot for any player, much less Brian Hill. He also had a catch for a touchdown and plays the Panthers next week, who just gave up 93 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns to Aaron Jones on only 13 carries. Assuming Hill plays and starts again, he should be a good Week 11 pickup for players who have Saquon Barkley, Aaron Jones, and Derrick Henry on bye weeks. As of Monday afternoon, Hill is owned in just 0.7% of ESPN leagues. The first receiver we'll look at is Cowboys wide receiver Randall Cobb. Randall has quietly put together 2 straight 6-reception games, including a game where he had 100 yards and a touchdown against the Vikings Sunday night. With Dak clearly targeting him more in the past 2 weeks, there's no reason to think it'll stop in Detroit next week either. Randall is owned as of Monday night in just 19% of ESPN leagues, and that number is sure to go up after the week he just had. The final player we'll look at is 49ers wide receiver Kendrick Bourne. With Emmanuel Sanders potentially missing Week 11 due to a rib injury, Bourne can be a solid receiver for a 1-week fill-in. During the Monday night game of the year, he had 8 targets, and on those targets he hauled in 4 catches for 42 yards and a touchdown. With George Kittle more than likely coming back for Week 11, his targets may dip, but if Emmanuel Sanders is in fact out against the Cardinals, Bourne is a guy to look at. He has 2 touchdowns in the past 2 games, and I'm sure he would like to keep that streak up. There were a few players who could have been mentioned, like quarterback Nick Foles, who is owned in less than 10% of ESPN leagues, Kalen Ballage of the Dolphins, who is owned in less than 30% of leagues, and Steelers wide receiver Deontay Johnson, who is owned in 15% of ESPN leagues. Anyway, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Again, thank you for watching, and have a great day. Skol Vikes.